Athenians were now set upon harming the Aeginetans, he agreed to betray Aegina to the Athenians, naming the day when he would make the attempt and when they must come to aid him. Later, Nicodremus, according to his agreement with the Athenians, took possession of the old city, as it was called, but the Athenians were not there at the right time, for they did not have ships worthy to fight the Aeginetans. While they were asking the Corinthians to lend them ships, the affair was ruined. The Corinthians at that time were their close friends, so they consented to the Athenians' plea, and gave them 20 ships at a price of 5 drachmas apiece. By their law they could not make a free gift of them. Taking these ships and their own, the Athenians manned 70 in all, and sailed for Aegina, but they came a day later than the time agreed. When the Athenians did not show up at the right time, Nicodremus took ship and escaped from Aegina. Other Aeginetans followed him, and the Athenians gave them Sunium to dwell in. Setting out from there, they harried the Aeginetans of the island. But this happened later. The rich men of Aegina gained mastery over the people, who had risen against them with Nicodremus, then made them captive, and led them out to be killed. Because of this, a curse fell upon them, which, despite all their efforts, they could not get rid of by sacrifice, and they were driven out of their island before the goddess would be merciful to them. They had taken 700 of the people alive. As they led these out for slaughter, one of them escaped from his bonds, and fled to the temple gate of Demeter the lawgiver, where he laid hold of the door handles, and clung to them. They could not tear him away by force, so they cut off his hands and carried him off, and those hands were left clinging fast to the door handles. Thus the Aeginetans dealt with each other. When the Athenians came, they fought them at sea with 70 ships. The Aeginetans were defeated in the sea fight, and asked for help from the Argives, as they had done before. But this time the Argives would not aid them, holding a grudge because ships of Aegina had been taken by force by Cleomenes, and put in on the Argolid coast, where their crews landed with the Lacedaemonians. Men from ships of Sicyon also took part in the same invasion. The Argives laid on them the payment of a fine of 1,000 talents, 500 each. The Sicyonians confessed that they had done wrong, and agreed to go free with a payment of 100 talents. But the Aeginetans made no such confession, and remained stubborn. For this cause the Argive state sent no one to aid them at their request, but about 1,000 came voluntarily, led by a captain whose name was Eurybates, a man who practised the pentathlon. Most of these never returned, meeting their death at the hands of the Athenians in Aegina. Eurybates himself, their captain, fought in single combat, and thus killed 3 men, but was slain by the 4th, Sophanes, the son of Deciles. The Aeginetan ships found the Athenians in disarray, and attacked and overcame them, taking 4 Athenian ships and their crews. Thus Athens and Aegina grappled together in war. The Persian was going about his own business, for his servant was constantly reminding him to remember the Athenians, and the Pisistratidae were at his elbow maligning the Athenians. Moreover, Darius desired to take this pretext for subduing all the men of Hellas who had not given him earth and water. He dismissed from command Mardonius, who had fared so badly on his expedition, and appointed other generals to lead his armies against Athens and Eretria, Datis, a Mede by birth, and his own nephew Artaphernes, son of Artaphernes. The order he gave them at their departure was to enslave Athens and Eretria, and bring the slaves into his presence. When these appointed generals, on their way from the king, reached the Aleian plain in Cilicia, bringing with them a great and well-furnished army, they camped there, and were overtaken by all the fleet that was assigned to each. There also arrived the transports for horses, which in the previous year Darius had bidden his tributary subjects to make ready. Having loaded the horses into these and embarked the land army in the ships, they sailed to Ionia with 600 triremes. From there they held their course not by the mainland and straight towards the Hellespont and Thrace, but setting forth from Samos they sailed by the Icarian Sea and from island to island. This, to my thinking, was because they feared above all the voyage around Athos, seeing that in the previous year they had come to great disaster by holding their course that way. Moreover, Naxos was still unconquered, and constrained them. When they approached Naxos from the Icarian Sea, and came to land, for it was Naxos which the Persians intended to attack first, the Naxians, remembering what had happened before, fled away to the mountains instead of waiting for them. The Persians enslaved all of them that they caught, and burnt their temples and their city. After doing this, they set sail for the other islands. While they did this, the Delians also left Delos, and fled away to Tinos. As his expedition was sailing landwards, Datis went on ahead, and bade his fleet anchor not off Delos, but across the water, off Phrygia. Learning where the Delians were, he sent a herald to them with this proclamation: "Holy men, why have you fled away, and so misjudged my intent? It is my own desire, and the king's command to me, to do no harm to the land where the two gods were born, neither to the land itself nor to its inhabitants. So return now to your homes, and dwell on your island." He made this proclamation to the Delians, and then piled up 300 talents of frankincense on the altar, and burnt it. After doing this, Datis sailed with his army against Eretria first, taking with him Ionians and Aeolians. And after he had put out from there, Delos was shaken by an earthquake, the first and last, as the Delians say, before my time. This portent was sent by heaven, as I suppose, to be an omen of the ills that were coming on the world. For in 3 generations, that is, in the time of Darius son of Hystaspes, and Xerxes son of Darius, and Artaxerxes son of Xerxes, more ills happened to Hellas than in 20 generations before Darius, some coming from the Persians, some from the wars for preeminence among the chief of the nations themselves. Thus it was no marvel that there should be an earthquake in Delos when there had been none before. Also there was an oracle concerning Delos, where it was written, "I will shake Delos, though unshaken before." In the Greek language these names have the following meanings. Darius is the doer, Xerxes the warrior, Artaxerxes the great warrior. The Greeks would rightly call the kings thus in their language. Launching out to sea from Delos, the foreigners put in at the islands, and gathered an army from there, taking the sons of the islanders for hostages. When in their voyage about the islands they put in at Carystus, the Carystians gave them no hostages, and refused to join them against neighbouring cities, meaning Eretria and Athens. The Persians besieged them, and laid waste their land, until the Carystians too came over to their side. When the Eretrians learned that the Persian expedition was sailing to attack them, they asked for help